The holidays are coming up, and if you have an addicted loved one in your life, you might be stressing about several things about the Christmas events, how to handle those. Do you invite the person? Do you not? How to act? And there's also this whole other dilemma about gift giving. What's enabling and what's not? How do you handle that? How do you be supportive and loving but not fall into enabling? And also, how do you not be offensive to the person while you balance all of those other dilemmas? And so, because it's such a complicated topic, we have several experts. I call them expert witnesses here to talk to us about this because I want you guys to get a lot of different perspectives on this topic as you go into this holiday season and make decisions about it. So, I will let you introduce yourself. We'll start with David, and then Dana and Molly. If you guys will introduce yourselves too, that would be awesome.
Hi, everybody. My name is David Marion. I'm a certified intervention professional, certified recovery coach and advocate, co-author of a book called Addiction Rescue, the No BS Guide to Recovery. Helped create legislation on the first opioid epidemic, legislation in Minnesota that 12 other states followed. Been involved with the CDC and PBS on documentaries on the opioid epidemic, and been a man in long-term recovery. So nice to be here.
Great. Nice to have you, David. So you got a professional and personal experience.
That's right. A little
Love
combo
it.
platter. Yes.
That's great. That's awesome.
Lived it and lived through it. Yes.
There you go. And Dana, will you introduce yourself to us?
I will. So I will start off by saying I am David's ex-wife and the co-author of Addiction Rescue. I am a certified recovery coach, certified family addictions coach, and also an interventionist. And I'm, an advocate for any family struggling on either side of the addiction equation, whether you're in addiction or you are dealing with someone else's addiction. Here to, help and support in any way I can. So I'm always happy to be back with you, Amber. So thank you.
Thanks for coming back. Glad to have you. And Molly, last but not least, tell us about you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Molly Desch. I am a certified life coach. I was a heavy drinker for 2 decades, and now I coach women on sobriety who are looking to get free from alcohol. Glad to be here again.
I'm so excited. We have such a good panel to have this discussion because we can just look at it from all of these different perspectives. So before we jumped on here, everybody that's watching, David was jumping in there and he was giving some good advice away. And I told him, I was like, stop. Or Dana told him to stop. Wait, because we want you to say that on when the people are on here because they want to hear this. So we're going to jump right into the topic about gift giving. And I want to hear from each of you because I think we each have a slightly different perspective. And because there's no one size fits all answer, I want people to hear all the different ideas and options about it so that you can find the option that's best for you because everybody's situation is slightly different. So, love to hear from any of you guys who want to jump in there. Jump in there, tell us what is your thoughts about the gift giving because people stress about this so much.
Amber, I think you should continue about that stress, just so if people are wondering, well, what does she mean it's stressful? Just kind of go into what causes the stress for people, and then we can go into how to handle it.
I'm glad you reminded me of that because it's so obvious in my head. I forget to just say it. I think that the reason that it's so stressful is because you don't want to be rude but you also don't want to enable somebody and you don't know how to sort of navigate this awkward situation without making someone feel really like in the spotlight and all their stuff's in the air, but you really sort of go back and forth in your head. Do I give them a gift? Is it okay to give someone like a gift card? It's probably not okay to give them money, but what if I give them a gift and then they return it or pawn it and they use the money for drugs? Am I like contributing? And then you just get yourself all in a tizzy. And I'm speaking from a person who is not only just an addiction professional, but I come from a family where addiction is everywhere. And I've had this struggle, I've had this whole dilemma year after year in my own head about what do you do? And not just at holidays, this applies to birthdays and other kind of situations when it comes to gift giving. So that is the dilemma.
Well, I don't mind jumping in since nobody else is.
Jump in.
First thing I want to reiterate, Amber, is it is different for everybody and the situation. And people know their family members and what their disease has led them to do, whether it's pawning stuff or I can't think of a gift you can give that's not returnable. I mean, even if it's a gift card, you can stand outside the store or the restaurant and sell it, and get
Yep.
money. So, I mean, if that's really a concern and your loved one has been known to do that, I don't know that any gift is appropriate unless you actually give them food. Harry and David, it's like a great option. Coffees, obviously whatever your loved one likes. But if you're worried about they can return it, pawn it, get money for it, I can't think of a scenario they wouldn't. So you got to use your best judgment as to how your family member acts in those situations or has presented in the past. Is that something that they would do? That was my first thought.
So what you're saying, Dana, is there's no like surefire, solid answer to it. Like sometimes people say, well, I'll just get them like some Chick-fil-A gift cards and some, little places I know they eat or something like that. But no matter how hard you try, there's really no surefire way, because if you're dealing with someone with a pretty severe addiction, they can turn anything into money.
Yeah.
It's like a superpower.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've even had clients tell me that they've taken groceries back to the store. So, I mean, I feel like we get so in our heads and we're trying to sort of outsmart it, but you can't outsmart it that way. I don't think it's so complicated. Mm-hmm.
And maybe the thing too is to say to your loved one, especially if they're in early recovery, I want to be appropriate. I don't want to tempt you by giving you something that would pull you back into past behaviors. What could I give you that would be appropriate, that you would appreciate, that wouldn't pull a trigger for you and say, oh, I took that and got money for it once, I could do that again. So like we've talked about in the past, just ask them. Sometimes that's the very best thing to do too.
Right. Like if they're in a good place with it and the conversation's on the table, if it's sort of out in the open, the best thing to do is just talk about it out in the open so that it's just not all weird and awkward and behind their back and stuff like that. That's not a good, I like that. David or Molly, do either one of y'all have any thoughts on this idea?
Well, I was going to share something that I noticed from corporate, like working in the corporate environment, is office parties. Like if you go out to a restaurant and it's a white elephant gift or something, almost always there's at least a couple people that bring a bottle of booze. And so I just want people to be cognizant, if you do get invited to an office party, that you never know who's going to be there. Maybe somebody is in early recovery and forego the cheap bottle of wine or, Jägermeister or whatever you want to bring, and get something that is funny and hilarious instead, because you never know who's going to end up with that gift. And it might be somebody that might not, that shouldn't have that.
That's such a good point, because when you bring in something like that and it's one of those like Christmas, either like you draw it out of a pile or like you said, like the white elephant, you don't know who's going to end up with it.
Right,
So
exactly.
I never thought about that. That's really smart. I'm glad you said that, Molly. Yeah.
So my thoughts are a little different than everyone else's.
Good.
Listen, I'm a guy that's really going to talk about the elephant in the living room, right? We're not going to dance around it and pretend. We're not going to change the name on it. We're not going to change our narrative. The greatest gift you can give someone is the gift of desperation. We can offer them maybe treatment, maybe therapy. Hey, you know what I'm going to get you? I'm going to get you 10 meditative sessions or 10 yoga sessions, somewhere you can practice and learn to quiet the noise. I'm not going to give you money. I'm not going to give you food. I'm not going to, because you know how to get all that. I'm not going to give you gifts that don't mean anything. The only gift that really is going to represent something is a gift of health right now. And I think that's really what I would offer them.
I like that, David. When you first started down that line of thinking, I thought you were going to say like, 5 coaching sessions with like somebody like Molly or something like that. Yeah. But you said, which would be great. But what you said was meditation or yoga or something, which wasn't the first thing that popped into my head. But after you said it, I was like, oh yeah, because that doesn't even seem pointed, but helpful. I really like that. That's a great idea.
I mean, if we're dealing with alcoholism or drug addiction or any type, listen, I have a client that I'm working with her. gambling addict, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just came out of a gambling treatment center. And his grandmother, who he hadn't seen in a while, he met for dinner. And what does grandma do? She realizes, yeah, things have really been tough. She gives him a check for $2,500 to cover all his past expenses and to pay for all the debt. Now, what do you think little Johnny did? Did Johnny go pay his debts? Johnny was found at the casino that night and lost it all. Of
I mean, yeah, that
course.
would be like handing the alcoholic a bottle of alcohol for Christmas, right? Like
Absolutely.
that'd be really difficult situation to put them in.
Yeah, absolutely. The grandmother didn't know. She had no idea. She was doing the best she thought she could to help her grandson out. And these are
Mm-hmm.
the situations that we're dealing with. This is a really stressful time. You know, we see more relapses. We see people struggling in recovery, trying to get in recovery this time of year. There's a reason why. The emotions of the holidays are triggering for everybody in
Yes.
some form or fashion. We've had past family members that aren't at this holiday. We've had, different events that have happened that created some type of trauma in our life.
Being
And to
around
alleviate,
people that stress us out, all that kind
sure,
of stuff. Yeah.
absolutely. So we're just trying to bring the baseline of happiness higher through the holiday season, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what's the best gift we really can give? The gift of love, hope, right, to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
the gift of help.
Mm-hmm.
When someone's feeling hopeless, we're going to offer that rope of hope and
Rope
really
a hope.
bring
I like
something
it.
in. Yeah.
I want to bring a slightly different perspective because that was my goal from having this panel discussion, is because I really want you guys to think of this from every angle. And I want you guys to have a lot of perspectives and understand that there's not one right one. It's so complex. You got to really think it through. I want to get you guys, if you're thinking about gift giving to someone that has an addiction, when you're trying to stress yourself out, thinking, what if I get them this and they take it back and they use the money? That's you getting in your own head trying to control their situation. And gift giving is about you. And while I don't think it's wise to give someone a $2,500 check that has an addiction to drugs or a gambling addiction or something like that, I also don't think that you should put yourself through so much turmoil, stressing out about what they're going to spend that money on. It's kind of like this. If you see someone who's on the street and they're homeless and they're asking for money, and you're like, well, what if I give them this money and they go buy a bike or whatever? My thoughts on it are this: you just keep your side of the street. What they do with it, if you feel called to give something, you just give it, and they do with it what they need to do with it. Because I think so many of us have been told this storyline about, like, what if I give them $20 and they go use heroin with it and they overdose? Then it's just my money and I killed them. And I'm like, no, it's not. You did not kill them. Addiction killed them. If that happens, okay. So I don't want to minimize it, but I also don't want you guys to feel so responsible and so put on edge by the situation too. If you're concerned that your loved one doesn't have food, you're concerned they don't have a warm coat to wear, you're concerned, don't you just do what feels right for you, within reasonable limits. Do not hand them a wads of cash. But outside of that, this whole, what if I give them a $10 Chick-fil-A card and they take it back? You're just stressing for no reason, I think, because there's no $10 Chick-fil-A card that's going to make or break anybody's addiction. I promise you. There's just not. Yeah, it's not going to do one way or the other.
Well, they might go out and buy a pill, and that pill might be loaded with fentanyl.
They could.
Right?
But if that happens, that's their addiction, not the person that gave them a $10 Chick-fil-A card. And that's what I'm trying to get the family members to see is you can't blame yourself for every single choice that they make or don't make. You got to understand that you have limits, and part of Christmas and holidays is about what you need. And if you need, as a mama or a sister or, whatever, to feel like I did something nice for them and I took care of them and I didn't want them to feel judged and alienated, if that's what you need, that's what you need. Mm-hmm. So for me, you got to weigh in everybody's needs. But like I said, that's why I want to have all these different perspectives out there.
Somebody posted in the comments about more of, well, she called it sensations gifts. So more like experiences. instead of something tangible. And I really like that idea. I mean, there's so many idea like, I will take you to the movies on this day, or, let's go on a trip, or, the opera's in town, or let's go see the Nutcracker, or whatever. Experience gifts are really fun, and it also allows you to spend time with that person other than worrying about what they're going to do with that gift. I think that's a really good idea.
I think that's a good idea regardless, like a experience kind of thing. I think that's a good gift
Mhm.
giving idea in general. I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Because
that
usually
goes
what they're
along.
lacking, what they're usually lacking is connectiveness. And now that the family is coming together, they're getting out of the loneliness, the isolation, being withdrawn. They're given a gift of love and support and connection. And I think no matter what it is they do, going ice skating or going to the movies or whatever, how Molly was talking about, absolutely agree. That's the greatest gift also for them.
Yeah.
Now I'm wondering, Dana, because you and David are interventionists. I call it like the old school A&E, the TV show interventionists, like the ones that they do the heavy duty front lines, get the family in the circle, read the letters, put you in the van, swoop you off to treatment, kind. And I know that kind does involve quite a bit of leveraging, right? Like, what goes through your mind coming from that perspective when I say don't stress yourself out about giving some gift cards or something? Because that's slightly different, I know. How does that fit with that model that you come from as far as this sort of leveraging model?
I guess I don't understand the question, Amber. How you're tying in interventionists to gift giving?
Well, I think I know, well, and I could be wrong, you guys can tell me, but I think a lot of it is when you're trying to pull back a little bit. I mean, you're still trying to love the person, but you're also saying, I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm no longer going to, take your calls in the middle of the night and all that kind of stuff. Does my saying that kind of go against that type of model? Because what David said, the best thing you can give them is a gift of desperation, which might be a slightly different perspective.
Yeah. So when we do those pullback things, if they refuse treatment, I mean, a lot of times, especially around the holidays, I've done this quite a few times recently. You're not invited to family holidays, so it's actually used as leverage that we're not going to let you ruin another one of our holiday celebrations with the family, or you're not allowed to come to the coast house with us when we do our Christmas celebration. Kind of thing. So that, I mean, we do use those kinds of things as leverage in those letters.
Okay.
If that's what you're wondering about.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think also, Amber, what you're talking about is creating these healthy boundaries and pathways for them,
Mhm.
and what are we willing to do and what are we not willing to do, which comes down to the bottom line. Listen, if they're not willing to accept treatment on an intervention, what is the family going to draw the line at? If you're not willing to do this, well, we don't want you in this behavior anymore around the holidays. It's been such a toxic situation that always ends the same way. And we're not willing to put ourselves through that anymore.
So let me ask you guys this, because you guys are bringing up a good point. Not even just with the gift giving, but the invitation to come to the event itself, the family thing or whatever. When you draw that line, are you drawing that line trying to sort of cut the blood supply off to the addiction to try to get them that gift of desperation? Or are you drawing that line because every year when you come to the Christmas party, you act a crazy fool and there's a fight and the police have to come, why are you drawing that line if you're drawing that line?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think both things come into play. The biggest reason for drawing the line is if a substance user refuses to go to treatment, what they're really saying is, I don't want to change, and I don't want you guys to change because everything's working perfect in my life, right? Because they're looking for comfort. They don't want to get uncomfortable, and they want to keep the status quo as it is because they're comfortable in it. So what they're saying is, I'm not going to change, and I'm not going to let you change either. So if you want to motivate that person to change, and you always talk about this, Amber, you got to start changing things yourself. You got to start making them a little uncomfortable. Well, when they realize that they're not going to get invited to the holiday things, they're not going to get to do the fun things that they used to be able to do with the family, and we're going to withhold those things, they're just saying, I'm putting up a boundary. You're putting up a boundary. You're not going to get help. Then I have to help myself. And this is how I'm going to protect myself and the rest of the family.
Okay, so you're saying it's a little bit to cut the blood flow off, but it's a lot of bit more of a healthy boundary on the family members is that what you're saying?
I am. Yeah,
Okay.
I am saying that. And there is a piece of it that's, I don't want to say coercive, I don't want to say forcing, but you are trying to force the issue that they need treatment. And, I hate for people to see it as a punishment. People say, well, that feels like a punishment if I put that in a bottoms line letter that they can't have holidays with us. And it's like, we're not doing it out of punishment to them. We're doing it to protect you from another
Right.
shitty holiday with your loved ones.
Right. I think that's a really good differentiator there, because I think when you draw these boundaries, you got to ask yourself, why am I drawing this boundary? What's my intention here? Is my intention here because I'm trying to make a point? Is my intention here because this is what I need to do for myself or for my kids? I think that's what it's all about. It's about the why you're doing what you're doing more than what you're doing, actually, in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Okay. What do you guys think about this? This is sort of on the topic just because it triggered me when you were saying that. I kind of think that when you also run the risk of when you draw a line like that, when you say, listen, if you don't do this, you can't come to the Christmas party or whatever. If you don't go to treatment, you can't come to the Christmas party. If you draw that line and they don't go to treatment, which is a risk, they're going to use that resentment to fuel more use. And I would venture to say that resentment is going to buy them a lot more drugs than the $20 gift card to the Chick-fil-A. That's my philosophy. So there is this fine line. I call that emotional currency to use because they use that against you. They use that self-pity and resentment. And I can't believe you. You just don't accept me for who I am. There's a lot that goes into that.
So they rationalize and justify their using through these measures. Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're going to look for anything to justify it.
Yeah.
Right. Bottom line is they want to get high. It doesn't matter what it is. If you were wonderful to them or you were terrible, they're going to just still feel because they still have that limited self-belief that says I'm not enough.
Right.
So it's really dealing with a lot of that. You have to back this out. It's really tough for the families, right? They have all these different family models that are coming out. The craft model they started to use in many different places. Really changing some of the narrative on how we're talking with our loved one who is struggling with substance use or alcoholism. And I think it's interesting. They're trying to move away from terms like enabling and tough love. And, they're going to compensate or reward good behaviors and things like that. And, it is a different way to approach your loved one, right? We want to love them until they can love themselves. But if we keep loving them and we're not getting any response and they keep doing these things, where do we draw the line and say, okay.
I kind of like that because I'm definitely of the craft model variety, but I kind of feel like there's a time and place for all of it. And I like what you just said. Like if we've tried this and it's not working, then maybe we need to try something else. And I think that's why it's so good to have all the different aspects and ways to look at all the different models of how to help someone come in. Because I definitely think like craft model is particularly good, I think, for someone who's probably maybe what I would call like a functioning addict or an alcoholic. But when you get to someone who's they're literally about to die and about to kill someone else, then I think you got to skip the craft model. Even though I'm a craft model person, I say you got to skip it and you got to hire Dana or David or somebody to come out and say, you're going, because at that point, you're life or death, I mean, it's always life or death, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Like,
for sure.
If they're still functioning and they're still working and they're still making money and everything's still working, okay, you can call out David and Dana anyway, and they're still functioning too well. They're not leveraged enough for that to work anyway. So I think that's why you've got to like look at where am I at my situation? What's going to work? Where's my loved one at? Where am I at? What am I ready to do? Kind of thing.
Right. And I think the craft model inevitably leads to the arise model of more of an invitation to the loved one, to an intervention. Rather than done in the Johnson model as a surprise.
Right.
So they're trying to reward the behavior. They're trying to love their loved one until that one is receptive on the treatment. Right. It's not, telling them we don't have to lay all the bottom lines down and have all these, lines that are drawn in the sand. We're going to invite you when we believe you're ready. But how are we going to get you ready? We're going to believe we're going to work with the family. The family becomes strong enough and works with
Yeah.
them. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I think that's inevitably where they're headed with a model like that.
I agree completely.
Which
So
I believe is great, though. Listen, an intervention is not an attack, an ambush, an assault, right? It's done through the love, care, and support to help your loved one heal. And we're going to continually love them and care for them, and because they don't care for themselves right now, right? They don't love themselves. Their behavior is, the self-destructive behavior is not only dangerous to them, it's dangerous to the family, it's friends, employers, everyone around. And all they're trying to do is interrupt this or create some disruption in there that they could, really begin to see clear.
right.
But it's hard.
Amy, I see a comment up here from one of our viewers named Amy, and it just caught my eye. Amy says they don't care if they're not invited. And I think what I might say to you, Amy, is even if they didn't want to go anyway, we all care if we're not invited. If we're specifically not invited, if I don't care if I don't want to go to the work party, whatever. But if I literally am like not allowed to go, I care about that. So it's this weird dynamic of, you're probably right. They probably didn't want to go anyway because it's just slowing them down or getting in their way. But there is this care about this idea of being uninvited, I think, for most people. The option, even if I didn't want to, I want to be able to, kind of thing.
Yeah, I've actually been uninvited from Christmas before. And while, yes, I did not really want to go, it was very painful. And you kind of hold some resentment and anger towards those people for regardless of the reason why they uninvited you. And it is painful. So
I'm
I would
glad you
agree
spoke
with
up
you.
and said that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? That's what I love about a panel. I love having all these different perspectives. And tell us, would you tell us a little bit about that? And then would you also tell us, if you don't mind, Molly, what was the thing that made you decide to stop drinking in the
Sure.
end?
So getting uninvited from Christmas, it was on like my dad's side of the family, and I wasn't really close to anybody. It was far away, so I knew it would be like a whole weekend thing, and they were not drinkers. So, just a lot of things that were like, nope, 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 just checking off my list of being able to escape. So it was like kind of a relief, but also like, oh my God, my family doesn't want me there for Christmas. Like that really sucks. And, obviously it didn't change my behavior. It didn't make me evaluate my drinking or say, I'm not going to drink anymore because my family doesn't want me around. But it sucks and it hurts really bad. So I just want to put that out there. The reason that I got sober, I mean, I was a daily drinker for a good part of 20 years. And, some people can fall down a dark hole really fast. Some people, there is no dark hole. A lot of people say there's rock bottom, which I think is kind of, I don't know. I feel like that's really dangerous to say that there is rock bottom for anybody, because it looks so differently for everybody. But for me, it was not being the parent I needed to be for my kids when they needed me the most. I was recently divorced. And so as a sole caregiver, I mean, you never know when one of them falls down and needs to get taken to the ER and you're drunk on your ass, or I just got down a very, very dark hole, very depressed, ready to take my life. And that was, I just got fed up. I just got so tired of it, so tired of feeling like shit all the time and not connecting with my kids.
Let me ask you this. When you got uninvited from Christmas, did they tell you specifically it was because of your drinking? And they didn't.
Mhm.
They just said you're uninvited from Christmas?
So
Like, I'm
it was
giggling at
actually
you, but I'm just like,
interesting.
really?
So it was actually, so my dad uninvited me, but he scapegoated my step grandparents saying that they didn't want me there. And I was so upset that I called them and to ask, well, is there something that I did specifically to you? And that's when, the cat was out of the bag and they had no idea what I was talking about. And it was, yeah, it was interesting. So it wasn't like where the event was being held that I got uninvited. So yeah.
Why did he like imply that the grandparents didn't want you to come?
I mean, I guess just to avoid confrontation, maybe.
Okay.
Like it wasn't his fault, or I don't know.
Not really why did he do it, but like what impression did he give you? Oh, hey, Molly, just BTW. We don't want you to come Christmas. It's really the grandparents. I don't want you there. Like there has to be a like, well,
What was
like
the
some
reasoning?
kind of like, yeah. What was the reasoning that he was sort of implying about why the grandparents didn't want you there?
Sure,
That's just
gotcha.
interesting. Yeah.
That I'm difficult to get along with, and it was just a general consensus that I wasn't welcome.
Okay. Because you're a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Pretty
almost worse. He should have
It
just
wa-
said because you drink too much when you get. Yeah, just to say we just don't
Right.
like you. I mean, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard. Don't do
Yeah.
that. Don't do that, families. And if you're gonna uninvite, then just own it and say it, and don't put it off on someone else. And just if that's what you're gonna do, then just do it, because that way I wouldn't say. I would say don't do that thing that happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they may call you out, and then what are you gonna say?
So, Molly, inevitably, you knew it was about the drinking, though, right?
Actually,
precipitated.
no, because nobody said anything to me. Honestly, David, I drank for so many years and it was so second nature that I never really felt like I had a problem or that I needed to take a look at it, or, it just didn't really cross my mind for a very long time. So it really, honestly, it wasn't the first thing that I thought of. I thought I was just a bummer to be around. People just didn't like me, so I took it very personally.
Well, then to be fair, when you say it that way, maybe, I mean, this sounds strange to say, but maybe they didn't realize it was the drinking that made you difficult to be around. So maybe in their mind,
That's true.
they didn't connect the dot completely. If you're saying you didn't connect the dot, maybe they really didn't connect the dot and they weren't connected. Maybe that's why that was happening. That's interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because with that group of people, there was no drinking. So, when somebody's addicted to something and they don't have it for an extended period of time, they are not fun to be around.
Okay.
So it's very likely that was it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. See, I'm so glad you said that and talked about that, because it just brings up so many points. And David, if you don't mind, why did you decide to get sober?
Oh, why did I decide to get sober? Well, the first time I got sober was in September 1st, 1989. I was intervened working on Wall Street. They told me I was drinking and doing too much cocaine.
Oh, the Wall Street people told you that?
Yeah, and I said,
Dang,
you guys aren't doing enough.
Must have been real bad. Just saying.
Yeah. You guys aren't drinking enough. And I stayed sober for 12, 13 years. Ended up getting a bunch of knee surgeries done and got hooked on oxys. Was a first generation oxy guy. And I got to the point where I was being federally indicted, and I was looking at doing long term in prison. And I said, you know what? It might be a good idea to be sober before I enter federal prison. And yes, I was invited to be a guest of the federal government in the only gated community in Duluth, Minnesota for 60 months.
Okay.
And I went in there clean and been clean since 11 years.
That's an interesting way to look at it, because I think looking at it from an addiction perspective, you could easily say, these are my last days. I got to live it up, because most people, like even on their way to rehab, it's just like, let me get it all in, so It's interesting. I mean, it's
Yeah.
smart because getting sober, especially when you did it, if you were in that first generation, there was no put you on some Suboxone for a few days in jail. So,
Right. It wasn't an option. And you know
right,
that it's a straight kick in prison or jails. You know, it's tough. Going into treatment, at least they could give you some type of medical assistance.
right. You
That's
knew it would be cold turkey in a jail cell.
that's right. That's
Ooh,
right.
that'd be awful. I mean, you made the right choice, but I could also see someone making the opposite choice, saying, "These are my last days."
Well,
Live it
also
up.
the other part of it is if you walk into a federal prison or a jail or anywhere drunk, you're going to spend that time in the hole, the shoe, until you sober up.
Okay.
And even if they want to, you know, I've seen guys go in there and stay a lot longer than 3 days after they're sober because
Okay.
they pissed off the COs and they pissed off the staff by disrespecting them coming in so inebriated.
So you made a very strategic decision.
You think?
I'm gonna give you
Yeah.
credit because in active addiction, it's hard to be super strategic. You just survive in the day, so that's impressive. When you made that decision, did you think, well, first of all, how long were you going to be locked up? Did you know that at the time?
I did not, but
Okay.
Between 5 and 7 years.
In your mind, when you decide I'm going to get sober before I go in, was it a plan initially that, okay, this is it, I'm done with this, I'm giving it up like forever, or was it, let me just get through this a little bit?
Well, I've been sober a long time, so I knew what that was like. You know, I had some of the fruits of recovery and really enjoyed it. Was very active, and I knew how much better my life was. And, you know, once the devil crawls up your leg and bites you in the butt and you begin to run, you know that feeling is really pain, misery, isolation, reverting back to where I call what's cemented at the roots of addiction is trauma, right? And how do we tap into trauma? Through shame, embarrassment, different ways. And I knew that the embarrassment from going through something like that, the shame, I just wanted to embrace it. You know, I didn't want to run from it anymore. I wanted to embrace and move on with my life.
So it was two things at work, or a few things. One of the things was strategically, I'm going to make the decision. It's a bad move to go to jail and be in withdrawal. It's just not smart. And the other thing that came into play was because you'd been in recovery before, years before, you really had a deeper level insight about the issue, the bigger picture issue. And ultimately you were more ready to just move on from it because you had that experience prior.
Absolutely. And I knew what it would be like. I was doing, you know, so many of these oxys and, you know, inevitably led to heroin. Oxys are synthetic heroin. And I knew the amount that I was doing. There's no way. When I finally went into a hospital to sober up, you know, I came to after 3 days and started screaming for the nurse. What's going on here? You know, she says, "Sir, you've been balled up in the corner making farm animal noises for 3 days." You know, we kept bringing the cuff in, bringing your food, and I was just completely out of it. You know, there's no way that could have happened in jail.
Wow.
It would have been, you know, and if anyone knows that pain, what it's like trying to sober up from that, it's like somebody's inside of you cutting themselves out with a butter knife. And, you know, not to have to do that in a jail cell would have just been as bad as it gets.
Wow. Dana, let's hear from you from a family perspective.
Yeah, I also want to say that when Dave made that decision to go into treatment, he had that investigation hanging over his head, and he knew an indictment was coming down from the grand jury, and he knew he was going to be in a courtroom, and he knew he was going to be at a sentencing, and, you know, to be all messed up going through all that, I think that probably played into it some too, right, David? You wanted to get sober before all that was coming down?
Yeah, I wanted to have my head somewhat straight. You know, you're looking at a federal judge and you're slurring, you're not going to do pretty good. So,
Yeah.
No, I take it seriously. I joke about it, but it was a very serious thing, obviously. And yeah, I've since had coffee in the chambers of my sentencing judge. The first judge, he said, that's ever had coffee with someone that he indicted and sent to prison.
Wow. I bet that was kind of an interesting experience.
Yes, it was pretty unbelievable. Full circle. You know,
David
I
had
remember.
I was going to say at the sentencing, David said to him, "Sir, someday I want to come back here and have a cup of coffee with you," and he did.
And he's his secretary invited me to have, I was honored. What do you wear to a judge's chamber? Do I have to get a robe? I don't know. I want to dress like. Yeah. And I remember talking with him, and we chopped it up for an hour or so, and he had asked me. He said, "Is it okay that if anyone's going through what you're going through, I can use you as a resource?" And I said, "Your Honor, I'm going to tell you the same thing my lawyer told me at sentencing." He said, "You're about to meet the man closest to God that has total control of your future." I said, "Of course, Your Honor, you can use me."
I bet you're one of the only people that said, "Your Honor, one of these days I want to come back and have a cup of coffee with you." I bet maybe he's heard, "I want to come back one of these days," and something else.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. He did say that he's heard that a few times, but no one has had coffee with him or reached out after.
Impressive. Yeah.
And I thanked him. I really thanked him for sentencing me. I said, "You saved my life. You really did. I probably wouldn't be here today if this hadn't happened the way I was going."
Yeah. So Dana, do you mind talking to us a little bit from the family perspective, from being literally the person having to make these decisions about the holidays with someone in active addiction, with someone maybe who's in early recovery? Can you give us some sort of experience, strength, and hope from that lens?
Yeah. David, when he was using, was a functioning user. So he owned we owned a business, so he was very functioning. And I divorced him. In 2005, we got divorced, and he didn't get indicted until 2012. So it was 7 years that I wasn't with him. So when it got really bad and he was actually doing heroin, we weren't involved that way. But I will say that I've talked to his family members since, because everybody does holidays together. And, they, even to this day, like they say, they are so grateful that David's where he's at today, and they've never seen him in such a good place from year to year. But they still say, we don't always know that other shoe's not going to drop. So that never really goes away. When you have those issues.
Who says that?
Not.
Huh?
No. So,
that's it. I'm not going to the holidays now.
So when you have decades dealing with someone that you just are praying is going to keep it together for the holidays, and that they really are on this good path, and then there's a lot less time in sobriety where you can trust it, you always want to know, is this really the deal? And I will say, one of the greatest things that David did in his perspective and turning it around was, he was like, very very emotional about the fact that he had disappointed so many people in his life. And he just flipped that and said, I want to make everybody proud of me, whether it was his kids, his parents who are now deceased, his, relatives, his ex-wife, etc. So I think that's just such a great perspective, because of the shame and the guilt and the remorse that addicts have. And they are so used to disappointing everybody, especially around the holidays, and not pulling through and not being able to follow through with what they say, etc. Just to be able to flip that perspective and go, I want to make these people proud. Like, you have the chance to do that. David didn't have a relationship with the kids, for a lot of those years because of his using. And now they have the best relationships that father and daughter could ask for. So just all of that stuff can be turned around with that simple decision of, I'm going to start making people proud of me. I'm going to do the next right thing to keep that going.
I love that. Absolutely. Do you guys have time to take a couple of questions?
Yeah, there's so many questions coming in. I see that.
Yeah. And I do want to say, Marion, you said hello, shovelers. I like that. I think I'm going to steal that. The name of this channel is called Put the Shovel Down. And she said, I have not heard that. Shovelers. I like that. We're going to call her.
Well, Dana was telling me the name of the show. I said, what's the name of the show? She said, Put the Shovel Down. And I said, gee, I would have named it, You're Using the Shovel in the Wrong Direction, in the Wrong Way.
There you go. That's right. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. Every now and then I'll do one of the things I like in my other life is like I like true crime, and every now and then I'll do like a true crime video if it has to do with addiction and talk about the addiction mental health parts. And I think when I do those videos and they're not used to all this content, I think they think put the shovel down means something else because it's like about dead bodies. Because somebody said that to me one day. I was like, I never thought of that. It was like so funny.
Burying dead bodies, are you, Amber?
They're like, I like the name of your channel on one of those videos. I was like, oh, that's not even what I mean, but that too. That
You know
too.
what, Amber?
That too.
The first time I heard of your YouTube channel, I just had to laugh because I am the biggest helicopter mom and bulldozer mom. You know, I'm like on top of everything. I will make any path the easiest possible for my kids. I mean, I've had to really, look at that behavior because I am the caretaker neighbor to the hill. And when I saw put the shovel down, I'm like, oh yeah, because I'm the biggest bulldozer. So in my case, just stop the bulldozer.
You got the heavy equipment. Okay.
Heavy equipment off. So I knew exactly what how it pertained to me.
That's funny. That's hilarious. All right, let's take some questions. I know you guys can see the questions. So if there's a question that you see that you like have something to say about, you just feel free.
I want David to answer a question I saw, and that was about not inviting your loved one to the holidays because isolation isn't good for them. Susan says, but doesn't isolation from family events make it worse for them? And I'd like David to talk on that because he talks a lot about addiction being a disease of loneliness and isolation.
Let's see, Susan, but doesn't isolation from family events make it worse for them? I think the isolation comes from within. It doesn't matter where I was. I lived in New York City, in the biggest city in the world, basically, and I was so lonely and isolated from everybody. And I think that it's, it's really that feeling. Yes, to be separated from the family is really, really tough, especially what Molly was saying, when you're not even invited to your own family holidays. It does make it tough, and it does exasperate the addiction as well. Is there a happy medium? Yes, we want you here, but we're not going to allow you to drink and, stand on the kitchen table smoking bongs. There's some stuff we're going to draw the line. And if you can handle that, we could be okay with it. We don't want to isolate. We don't want to leave anybody out. Nobody inevitably wants to do that. We want our family around. It's just as hard on the family when they make that decision not to let you in as it is on them, because the family the whole time is thinking about, how is my loved one doing? What's going on with them? I know they're not here. And that's what they're worrying about. The other side is saying, I'm so pissed at my family for not inviting me to this thing. I don't care what's going on with them. So yeah, it is a tough, it is really, really tough, the isolation part of this. And we know that the antidote to addiction, right, is connection. And that's
Agree
what we're
completely.
trying to create.
Yeah. You bring a good point, because when you're in active addiction, even if you are at the family event and everyone is there, you're going to feel completely isolated and lonely. Now, you might not feel rejected because you're there, but you feel completely isolated and alone because you're hiding so many secrets that no one really knows who you are, and you're not really connected to them. You're maybe there physically, but you're not there emotionally, and they don't really know you because you've got this whole secret life going on. So I think you make such a great point about the loneliness of addiction, whether you're there or not. Yeah.
I also think one of the greatest things I've heard with loneliness is Bill Wilson, one of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love his writings. And he wrote the difference between isolation or loneliness and solitude. And he said, loneliness is an expression of one's pain, but solitude is an expression of our glory. If we can finally get to that place, it's really the transformation that we've made. That to be alone and not be lonely is truly what we're looking for. Yeah. When I have times when I'm sitting in my apartment alone, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. It's wonderful. It's a great place to be when you finally can decompress after a long day.
Right.
Really do nothing and just enjoy being there.
Yeah. Molly,
I just wanted to follow up and say that if you want to know more about what David's talking about those boundaries, and hey, we can invite you, but these might be the rules, the ground rules. Watch our special from before Thanksgiving, because we talked all about that. So
Right.
that's a good one to follow up with.
Good plug. Nice, Dana. I like it. You're on it. Molly, there's a question up here that I think you might be great to answer. And it said, somebody said, I once gifted a couple of alcohol-free beers to a loved one who drank a lot of beer. Not sure if that's a good idea. I'm going to tip that question to you.
It is a really good question, and it depends on the receiver. Some people drinking non-alcoholic beer will trigger them to want the real deal. And I know lots of people that drink non-alcoholic alternatives. Like there's this brand called Toast. It looks and smells and tastes just like wine, but there's no alcohol in it, and they love it, and it keeps them away from the real deal. So I would ask the person, like, would this bother you? Is this going to trigger you? If not, cool, here you go. Otherwise, I would forego it.
Now, I think one of the things that this particular person is saying, I think it's Ragnar is the name. It says, I get the impression from the question, the person drinks a lot of beer, as in they actively drink a lot of beer, like not as in their recovery, but does that change your answer at all or same?
I was a big beer drinker too. If somebody would have given me non-alcoholic beer, I would have thrown it in the trash.
Would it have felt insulting? Would it have felt like a dig, like a statement?
Man, that's a great question. I'm gonna say no, just because I don't know. I don't know if I can really answer that right now.
Well, you answered one question for me, which is a good one, which is they're not really drinking it for the taste, no matter what they're saying. Molly just answered it for you when they're in that active addiction state. I just like the taste of it, but she just told you the answer. If you gave her the non-alcoholic kind, she'd do it in the trash. So I got some kind of good answer from you. Okay, I like that.
I had a girl that I was working with. Her, she was sober. Her husband was not. She was trying to get her husband sober, and he would tell her all the time, I'm not drinking because I have a problem with it. I'm drinking because I love the taste of it. I love the taste of my rum. We like more Captain Morgan spiced rum. And I said, okay. And I sent her a link for a spiced rum that's non-alcoholic. I said, that should work then. If it's true what he's saying, he only drinks it because he likes the taste of it. Try that. Yeah, it didn't work. So you're absolutely right, Amber. They use that as an excuse. I just like the taste of it.
Yes.
Yeah. I can tell you from someone who's 1,000% addicted to Diet Pepsi that, and I like the taste of it. Would I drink a regular one? No, because now I like Diet Pepsi. That's what I drink. But like, give me a caffeine-free one? No, don't taste the same. And I know that caffeine doesn't have no taste one way or the other, but don't like it. It just doesn't work the same. So yeah, it's not the same. Yeah. Let's see here. Let's see. Do you guys see any other questions that you want to answer? Because I'm going to scroll through them to see. Oh, here's one. Pay bills directly. What do you guys think about that? Like instead of giving them money, maybe pay a bill that they have, like go to pay their electric bill or.
100% agree. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I would say without their knowledge, though. If it was me, I wouldn't want to know that they did that, just because it would feel insulting and I would feel like I was getting a handout.
Okay.
But it could be different for other people.
So for you, it wouldn't feel insulting because it's like a jab about being addicted. It would be like a charity, like a handout insulting.
Yeah, like
Okay.
you don't have your shit together. We're going to make sure that you have electricity this month for your kids.
I think that's such a good point because that's why this is so tricky, is because some of these ideas will come across as insulting if you're not careful. Like if you give somebody who's active alcoholic some kind of non-alcoholic beverage, I think that's risky as far as it could come across as a dig. And that's why it's so hard. And that's why family members are so stressed out about it. Because it's like, what is the answer? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I sure hope this has helped a lot.
It's like taking someone to a crack house and have them just smoke tobacco. Yeah.
Yeah.
Laura says, give a small gift from the heart. Give nothing to do at all with their addiction. Give them money. If you want to give them anything at all, that's okay. That's always good advice. I like it, Laura. Let me ask you this, David, because you mentioned earlier about giving a gift of health or wellness. What do you think if you gave someone maybe like a book on recovery or something like that, or like something that's specifically about addiction recovery? Would that be a good idea or a bad idea?
Fabulous idea.
Think so? Okay.
I think, yeah. My aunt years ago, who's been sober a long time out in LA, when I was going through my stuff, she sent me a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And inside she wrote on it, it really helps if you read it. Don't use it as a drink coaster.
I like her style. Now, were you already were you trying to get sober? Were you sober? Were you still drinking when she sent it?
No, I was out of my mind. I was back in New York City working on Wall Street, and yeah.
I was going to say, at first it's kind of, I like her style because I was going to say, oh, that's definitely going to be, I was going to say, did she write the word hint on the front? Big hint. But she did even better. She just made it like a funny remark. She didn't even try. She's like, oh, yeah, this is your hint. And let me tell you how to use it once you get it. I love it. That's hilarious.
And I'll follow up with that and say it doesn't have to be a book directly pointing to the fact like that was a definite direct fact you need to be in recovery. But there's just so many books on, whatever they're going through. If they've, had some kind of trauma, if they're recovering from a job loss or a divorce, or, they could use some personal growth in a certain area, or they're just immature and never grew up. I mean, there's plenty of books out there that aren't directly pointed to an addiction issue, but just something that might be thought provoking and seed planting for them that, oh, maybe there's more to this than I thought.
Agreed. Yeah, because like a big book, you send somebody a big book, that's a statement right there. But you could send people do their memoirs, like I just read the Chandler from Friends memoir. There's all these memoirs which you could give to somebody because they watch Friends. It's got a little secret message in there. I don't know. You could be sly about it. Did you read the big book when your aunt sent it to you? Okay. Are you reading Chandler book?
No, I'm reading the who's the other guy from Friends that just wrote his book?
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. Why am I not remembering his real name? Because I just read
Matthew Perry.
Matthew Perry, but he's Chandler on Friends. I call him Chandler.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I'm reading that right now. Did I read the big book? No, when she gave it to me.
What did you think when you got it at the time? And now we look back, it's kind of funny, but at the time, what did you think?
Who are these crazy culted people? What are they into? Really.
And is this even English? That's what I would have thought of. Is this even English when I read it? Okay.
But when I slowly started reading it, the same thing happens today, and the same word that they used back in 1935 when a drunken stockbroker met a drunken doctor in Akron, Ohio. For the first time, one alcoholic identified with another. And they realized together we could do what I cannot do alone. And part of the coaching work that I do with a lot of my clients is that I offer that to them. I'm offering them to grab onto the rope and work together. And we do this shoulder to shoulder, side by side. I've met many coaches out there who are suggestive in their approach in a more direct manner. You need to do this. You need to do that. And it's how we really create that narrative with our clients. It's going to move them and motivate them. I think that's really the most important thing. And it's through the identification, obviously, of living it and live through it.
I love that. It's such good advice. It's the how do we give that approach? And I think you can be very direct, but I think if you need to have a good relationship to be very direct. And if you'll put a little humor or something in it, kind of like David's aunt did, or that sent him the big book, it goes down better. I think.
When you're working with someone, the most important thing to do is have laughs.
Right.
They've been missing this for so long. If we can't show them how to have laughs and be able to laugh at ourselves, and really become fully transparent and accept some of the shortcomings in our life and defects and imperfections, especially, through the Zooms the last
Mhm.
couple of years since the pandemic.
Right.
You ever notice everyone on the Zoom is like looking for this angle? Oh, is my double chin here? No, my nose looks bigger on this angle. Maybe I'll go here. And everyone's bouncing around on the Zoom, right? And when we get to the place where it doesn't matter. It's okay.
Right.
This is who I am.
Yeah.
It's a big acceptance issue.
Mm-hmm. All right. Is there any last question that you guys see up there that's calling to you? I'm so ADD. It's hard for me to like read the questions and talk, especially on an interview. I'm really doing. So I want to make sure I don't miss any of these. There's such good questions and comments. A lot of you guys are giving good advice to each other, which I love. What is the CRAFT model? The CRAFT model stands for Community Reinforcement and Family Training. And it is about boundaries and positive reinforcement versus leveraging kind of thing. There's a whole thing. If you want to learn more about it, I've got a bunch of videos on this channel about it. And there's a book called Beyond Addiction that's all about it. Yeah.
And they say it increases the chances that a loved one's going to enter treatment through this model.
Mm-hmm.
I like Chris John Wright's question. I use cocaine 1 time a week on nights, out enjoying it. It okay or not?
I got some thoughts. Y'all got some thoughts?
Go ahead, Amber.
Is it causing problems for you? And why are you watching my video? Because I usually say if you're watching my videos asking yourself, do I have a problem? That right there is a good sign. Is it causing you problems? Is it causing you problems in a relationship? Is it causing you financial problems? Is it causing you problems at work? That's really, it's not what you do. It's not even how much you do it. It's how much problems is it causing you. That's really what it is. And if you look at the clinical criteria, like in the real clinical diagnostic book, doesn't say anything in there about what or how much. It literally says, it looks at everything else. Is it causing you health problems? Is it causing you psychological problems? Is it causing you relationship problems? Causing you to miss work? Are you putting yourself in dangerous situations to do it? Like those are the questions for whether it's a problem or not. And that is such a great question. I don't know who asked that. Did you say it was somebody named Chris?
His name is Chris John Wright. And I just want to add one thing to that, because my definition too, and we talk about this in our book, Addiction Rescue, the No BS Guide to Recovery, is, are you suffering consequences? Like you said, having problems in relationships. But the other criteria is too, that we look at is everybody around you telling you have a problem, and you're the only one saying, no, you all have the problem. Like David said, no, you guys aren't drinking enough, so if David says it's like being in a room with your walking around with your fly down and nobody notices, or everybody notices but you, right? Is everybody telling you got a problem? There might be a problem there.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
And I think it also kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about how it's dangerous to say there's a rock bottom. Like 1 day a week could be a huge problem for one person and not impact somebody else a couple days, 2 or 3 days a week. So just like Amber said, if you're asking, is this a problem? Like, there's your answer.
If you got that like feeling inside and it's bothering you, that's an indicator, like just like a little indicator light. But if you're going out, if you use 1 day a week and it's Friday and it's payday and you're using all your paycheck that 1 day a week and you're not paying your bills and your wife's mad at you because of it and your credit's suffering, then yeah, it's a problem even if it's 1 day a week. So it's not the how many days, it's not the frequency, it's the how much trouble is it causing. There's a good question on here. How do I say, I know you don't like the holidays for many reasons, so you're off the hook. So many holidays and their birthdays in the hospital.
What's the question in there, Amber? I missed it.
I'll pop it up here. She's saying, how does she say to someone, I know you don't like the holidays for so many reasons, you're off the hook. So many holidays and birthdays are in the hospital.
So she's saying, how do you say to someone, like, because they've ended up in the hospital for so many holidays, how do you let them off the hook so they know they don't have to attend? Mm-hmm. I would be 100% honest about that.
Yeah, just say what she said. I know you don't like the holidays. Yeah, you're invited, but you're off the hook if you don't want to. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly how you say that, Mm-hmm. We don't want you to end up in the hospital again. So you're off the hook.
saying you're off the hook as far as like you don't feel like you have to come is different than saying you're uninvited. And that's not going to feel offensive, especially if you're saying, listen, if you don't want to come, no one's going to judge you, and I'll even cover for you. What's your cover story? I'll tell you. You know, that's a great thing to say to somebody.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you guys so much. You guys have been fun. I love that everybody has a different perspective. Every one of you brought a different angle, and I think that is so helpful for our people watching. If you guys were helped by this, put a little thumbs up emoji in the comments or chat, so David and Molly and Dana know that that they were helpful. And I've put the contact information for Dana and Molly in the description. And David, if you'll send me yours, or Dana, if you'll send me David's, I'll put his in the description too, because people can watch us on the playback, and that way everyone can connect to you guys if they want to in any different kind of way. Thank
Great.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Amber.
everybody.
Thanks, Amber.
Appreciate it.
All right. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next Thursday, 1 Eastern.
Have a great day.